e-meter was a device that lended credibility to this, because it's not me saying it, it's the meter. Look, the dial, the needle moved, man. What am I supposed to say? Of course, it's Hubbard who's telling you what the interpretation of the needle dials are, right? But but people kind of miss that when somebody's offering them an explanation for something that they don't understand. Yeah. They look at it and go, well, I don't get it. Well, this is what it's doing. Oh, okay. I mean, it's amazing how easy it is to do that with people, actually, but that's kind of how we are. So a lot of people bought into this. Now, Hubbard had lost a lot of followers from the original Dianetics wave, but he retained some of them. And with this theta thing in the new book in Wichita, he was gathering a new core of followers, see? And then he ends up having to badmouth Purcell because, of course, Purcell turned on him. So, of course, Purcell was never with him and was always out for himself and was only trying to steal Dianetics from me. This was Hubbard's claims later on after he screws Purcell over, right? So this is his modus operandi. So in developing the subject, he takes this e-meter, he goes to town, and he takes this idea of theta, and he goes to town, and he ends up, through the course of 1952, really developing this idea. And this was the transitional phase between the science of Dianetics and the religion of Scientology, which would eventually result from this. In fact, it was at the end of 1951 that he first used the term Scientology in any sense, in a written sense. And it was in early 1952 that he gave his first lecture where he introduced the word Scientology. But it didn't become a religion, and that whole thing didn't develop for another year or two. So 1952 is sort of the year of the Thetan. Hubbard takes this idea of theta as this life force, sort of nebulous sort of energy thing, and he turns it into a thetan with he makes it a noun. And so you're a thetan, you're not a body. I'm a thetan. This body is not what I actually am. My life force and the thing that continues to live even after the body dies is the thetan. And the thetan is the thing that we're now going to investigate to find out what it can and can't do, what its potentials are, all this kind of stuff. And this is where the term operating thetan is developed, 1952. And this is again foundational concepts for Scientology, which is why I'm going into detail about it. An operating thetan is a thetan that is free of having to be encumbered by operating a body in the material universe. He starts coming up with this concept of the material universe, matter, energy, space, and time, or MEST. He coins this word MEST, the MEST universe, right? Matter, energy, space, and time. The thetan is separate from the MEST universe. It's not contained within it. The MEST universe and a body that you operate is more like a thimble in the thumb of your thetan. You're this immaterial entity that exists independent of space and time. So that's what he develops through 1952. And okay, so then we move into 1953. He continues on this bent, and by the end of 1953, he's building up this new core of followers who are all about this new stuff. And they might have heard about Dianetics, or they read Dianetics and they came in through that route, but then they learn about the e-meter and this theta stuff. And if this is appealing to them, and to a certain number of people it was, they thought Hubbard was the bee's knees and he was onto something really amazing. And they were now developing all these new procedures that were not just recalling or reliving past incidents, but there were other things to do now, other exercises and auditing procedures. And Hubbard just went to town with this. So he was still making claims this entire time. He's stringing people along this whole time with the promises of healing and mental clarity and spiritual release. Now that's an added bonus here. And he hasn't gotten into the religion territory yet, but what ended up happening through all this time that he's making these claims, the FDA starts looking into this and goes, hey, dude, you don't get to say stuff like that. You don't get to say you get to cure, that you have the answer to curing cancer or leukemia Like, what are you talking about? Where, huh? And so he's actually some Scientologists or Dianeticists are being charged with practicing medicine without a license. This is bad, right? This is not reflecting well. Hubbard doesn't want legal trouble like that. So end of 1953 comes along. Hubbard has relocated, I believe at this point, to Phoenix, Arizona. He skipped town, skipped Wichita, left Purcell in the dust. Doesn't own the copyright to Dianetics anymore, so he can't keep calling his stuff Dianetics. So he's introduced this new term, Scientology, which I'm absolutely sure he brought in on purpose early on so he could do exactly this. He switches everything over, and he incorporates the Church of Scientology as an actual tax-exempt organization. They apply for tax exemption. They get it in 1956, I think, is when it officially goes into play. Maybe 55, maybe 54, but definitely by 56, they are a fully recognized tax-exempt organization, and they are a church. And in 1954, Hubbard really starts going to town in Phoenix. He creates the Golden Dawn series of lectures. And if anybody's familiar with Aleister Crowley or that whole thing, then Golden Dawn is a term that comes out of that. And Hubbard starts drawing from his occult past. And he starts creating this idea of levels and moving up these levels. And you're going to go from this state of, the encumbered, what he called aberrated. You can't see in straight lines. You see crooked. You misperceive things because of your reactive mind, because of your spiritual barriers and trauma. You're an encumbered human being, and you're not well off. You're bad off. And there's this state you can attain, and it's called operating thetan, or OT. And clear is kind of in between these two states. So you go from crappy person to a clear to an OT. And that's sort of the initial levels of Scientology. That's the basic structure of what you're trying to attain.